and gentlemen, invited guests, members of the press, it is my distinct honor to welcome you to the Rule of Law Development Foundation's webinar series for the 16th session, series number 16, which is themed The Threat of Voter Apathy and its Implications on the Legitimacy of Upcoming General Elections. Before we proceed, I'd like to call on Mr. Olumide Igbayilola to say a word of prayer for us before we take the national anthem.
Please, let's rise up on our feet as we pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for a day like this. We thank you for gathering us all here. We ask that as we commence this webinar, we commence to the glory of your name in the mighty name of Jesus. We ask that everything we discuss shall be a blessing, shall be a memory to each and every one of us in the mighty name of Jesus. Thank you, Jesus, for all you've done for us. In Jesus' mighty name we pray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olumide Igbayilola. While we're standing, please may we have the national anthem.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians old and proud to serve our sovereign motherland.
Thank you very much. We would like to proceed to recognize our special guests who have made time to be here with us today to educate us on the all-important subject. We also want to welcome all the online participants herein. As I said earlier, the event is being streamed live on Zoom and is being watched by over 1,000 persons at this time. We'd like to recognize the presence of our distinguished convener, Mr. J.B. Daudu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, the coordinator of the Rule of Law Development Foundation. We want to also recognize the presence of the chairman of the session, who is no other person than the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Joash Amokwiton, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, who is represented by Al-Hassan, Akeje Umar, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. We're still expecting their presence. We also want to welcome our distinguished panelists, the lead panelist, Professor Lai Olurode. Thank you very much. He's joining us online. Please let's give him a round of applause. Before we delve into the presentation, I'd like to invite the coordinator of the Rule of Law Development Foundation to give us his opening remarks and welcome address.
The chairman of session, the chairman of INEC, Professor Joash Amokwiton SAN, ably represented by Al-Hassan SAN. We had agreed with him that he will be online, or if he finds time, he will come. And the presenters, including our mystery speaker, who I conscripted through an OZOB yesterday, a juggernaut in election business, both national and in MBA, Mr. Festus Okoye, my very good friend. Distinguished attendees, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished members of the print and TV, of the media, print and television, I welcome you to this 16th session of the webinar. Normally, my welcome speech is usually very short, and today's one too will be short, because I like to resist the temptation to go into the issues that will be discussed by the distinguished lead presenter, Professor Lai Olurode, and all the other eminent speakers. So I will reserve and save my gunpowder on behalf of the foundation later. After I have heard from them, I can then dub whatever they have articulated on this very sensitive topic. But first of all, the Rule of Law Development Foundation is a body incorporated under Part C of the Companies and Allied Matters Act. Our duty and function is to intervene in matters arising so as to institutionalize the rule of law in the Nigerian body politic, until we get to the point where international best practices in good government or good governance is ingrained in our psyche. Our mission statement is to draw the attention of the three arms of government to proven and apparent systemic lapses brought about by non-observance of the rule of law. Thus, voter apathy is a key ingredient of the rule of law, especially that aspect that deals with equality of persons under the law. I'm sure the eminent speakers will elaborate on that in due course. My duty is just on behalf of the foundation to welcome you. Normally, at the end of the day, the foundation will state its position so that we can have a robust debate on the topic. It will be an audience-centered program so that we can have a robust debate on the issue of voter apathy, why it is becoming a threat to our democracy. So on that note, I thank you all and wish you an enjoyable and interesting webinar. Thank you very much.
Before we call on the distinguished lead panelist, Professor Lai Olurode, to navigate this complex web, we would like to read a brief aspect of his profile so that we can understand the worth of the subject and the depth of his knowledge. Professor Lai Olurode is a renowned professor of sociology and a former National Commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission. He brings a rare blend of academic depth and practical insider experience regarding the sociology of the Nigerian voter. He obtained his first and second degrees in sociology from the University of Lagos in 1979 and 1981. Respectfully, he went further to obtain a doctorate from the University of Sussex, Brighton, United Kingdom in 1984. He retired from the University of Lagos in 2022 after over 40 years of teaching and research. At different times, he was head of sociology and the dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences. He was appointed by the Federal Government of Nigeria as a National Commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, from 2010 to 2015. Professor Lai Olurode has written books, authored several articles on elections, social inequality, and gender studies. He also contributes regularly to media debates on issues of election and governance. Please, can we give him a resounding round of applause as he addresses us?
I want to appreciate the organizers of this forum for deeming me fit to make this presentation. I thank the organizers, particularly the chairperson, J.B. Daudu, and Mr. Dayo Adedeji San, and Mercy, who has been performing the role of an administrator. It is my pleasure to be with you. Permit me to preface my presentation with some remarks. I've shared the paper with Mercy. I think you can share it with people, those who are present at this webinar for ease of understanding. Number one, I would like to state that we are dealing with data science. APATHY is about data. We are bothered that we've never hit the 50% remark in our general elections. We've never hit the 50% mark. It hovers around 20 to 30%, whereas in other countries in Africa, especially Kenya and a few other countries, Côte d'Ivoire, they go as far as 2/3 of the country actually participating in their elections. It's even far better off in the developed economies. Again, we might not be able to know the extent of this apathy because the database is not really robust. What do I mean? You base the calculation on the total number in the register. Our register is not that perfect. We have not sanitized the register to the extent of having removed dead bodies, dead people from the register. And again, there have been dislocations in our country arising from insecurity, and people might not be able to get themselves smuggled into the register again. So the base is faulty, it's uncertain. Secondly, is the state of affairs with political parties in the country. There are not many parties that are in good condition to be able to mobilize the electorate for participation in the electoral process. Number three is the current contested legitimacy of government, with particular reference to hoodlums all over the country trying their best to factionalize the territories of Nigeria. Next is the culpability of the elites. It's very easy to say that there is voter apathy, but what is the share of the responsibility of the elites in this, in contributing to voter apathy? I'm suggesting, therefore, that at least should stop the blame game for the rising phenomenon of voter apathy and see to what extent we, the elites, driving the system, to what extent are we responsible for creating this monster of voter apathy. We know the implications of voter apathy. It does not augur well for legitimacy. It does not augur well for us as a country in terms of effective participation of the generality of the people. The next slide speaks about my methodology in this presentation. And I would like to state that my methodology is a critical perspective that critiques the status quo and tries to ventilate, looking at fresh ideas as to how we can look at voter apathy. That is to say, taking all factors into cognizance in offering a multifaceted explanation. I mean, factors in the politics, factors in the economy, the cultural terrain, factors in governance, all of this will be responsible. It's a multifaceted
technical, can we please try to establish connection?
kind of multi
Professor, could you please unmute yourself? We can't hear you anymore. Technical, can we unmute him from here? Professor, can you hear us?
What is the core research question that we seek to ask in this presentation? Number one is that why do voters stay away from the polling units? Why do they stay away? I think that is the question to ask. And I will try as much as possible to provide answers to that question. Why do voters stay away? Secondly, it would be good to know the geography, the demography of those that are staying away. Who are they? Are they young? Are they old? Are they women? Are they men? Are they retirees? Are they the working class? Who are those people that are staying away from participation in the electoral process, particularly in voting in our country? So we know where do we direct the searchlight and which group do we focus on. It's good to have an holistic figure, but that figure must be disaggregated for a clearer understanding and for a robust intervention by the Rule of Law Foundation. Then the next question would be, who is to blame for voter apathy? Those who don't go out to vote, the majority of the people, the masses, or those who erect obstacles on the part of those that are willing to go out to vote, but they get scared when they get to the polling arena and they run helter-skelter back to their homes. Then, what can you and I do to bring back our voters? What can we do to bring them back to the polling arena? I must also say that voter apathy is a global phenomenon. There's no country in the world that has been able to produce 100% participation in the electoral process. Of course, we must know that the geography of voter apathy is such that developed countries are doing far better in this regard than the third world countries. If you look at the figures, the 2023 elections, Nigeria voter turnout is about 26%. Ghana, far better than Nigeria. Consistently, Ghana has been doing very well. In fact, the 2024 election will be one of the worst outings for Ghana. Ghana has done far better before. Kenya consistently has been doing very well, over 50%, 64% in the 2022 election. South Africa also is far better, almost 60%, 58%. When you go to Côte d'Ivoire, it's far better than Nigeria. France also is about 71%, Brazil 79%, United States about 64% in the 2024 election, and Egypt also is better off. But again, like I said before, there is no country that can boast of 100% participation. So the phenomenon is global. But of course, there are variations across the world because, again, of how is the economy doing, the wealth of the people, how do people feel connected to the state. Because it has to do with the citizenship-state connection. If there is a complete disconnect between the state and citizens, of course, people will not be smiling to the polling unit to cast their vote. Where they feel alienated from the political parties, where parties are weak, where there is no internal party democracy, where you have the money bags calling the shots, the chances are that people will think that why should they get involved? The agency factor is dead, is muted. So the agency factor, which is what voter apathy represents, people see themselves as not counting, as unimportant, as irrelevant. Therefore, why should they go out to vote? Public opinion does not matter. If that is their perception, we now need to embrace policies that will make them feel a sense of belonging, that will make them to feel that their opinions matter within the small groups of parties that they belong to and in all the facets of the electoral process. So some of the assumptions for my presentation is that the problematic issue is that perception of lack of agency can be traumatic when people feel that they don't count, whether at the household level, at the community level, at the club level. If somebody feels that, why should I go to the club? My opinion does not matter. I don't get respected. That's quite an issue for those who call the shot at the club to really deal with. Then the real reason why this behavior is worrisome, is why it is an irritation, is because of the fears of the legitimacy of a government that is thrown up by a minority of the population, where you are supposed to have at least 50% or 30% or 10% of people turning out to vote. It means that that government has been installed by just a minority of the people. So quite a large number of people stay away from participation, and that should trigger concern for people. That concern for voter apathy by elite may not be driven by altruistic move as such, and public concern for public involvement or public interest, but rather by the greed for votes, for domination, and for probably exploitation. The ballot paper itself is an ordinary piece of paper that is loaded. It's a contractual document. It's loaded in the sense that gives me your vote. I promise you, you're going to have good roads. Your children are going to have good jobs. I can assure you, you're going to resolve the chieftaincy title in your community. So in exchange, if I'm exchanging my vote for something concrete or inconcrete or something valuable or invaluable, what is valuable to me might not be valuable to you. If I did that, I did so the first time, I got nothing for my vote in return. Nothing is in exchange for my vote, which I've given you freely. Next time around, I did the same thing, nothing in place for me. No access road to my community, no food on my table, my children can't go to school, there's no security in the land. Next time again, when you ask me for the same thing, I might withdraw. I might say that, look, I've done so repeatedly several times as a routine. What did I get from it? Nothing in my pocket, nothing on the table, not even the scrubbles from the table. I might think twice before I follow you the next time around. So in exchange for what? There must be something either material or immaterial, something concrete for all the parties. Where one party reneged on the promise, on the contractual basis of the relationship, it's most likely that next time around I'll become wiser. And what do? I can withdraw completely, sit down, look, as Bola said, or whatever it is. Again, you have to be able to make distinctions between political parties to be sure that you are really opting for something totally different in terms of policy options. Where you cannot distinguish party A from party B, there might not be much to choose between the political parties. I don't know whether we are there already, but I think we shouldn't be moving in that direction. In that case, I remember what Adam Oshiomhole said in 2019 when he said, once you leave your party and come to the APC will sanitize you and your sins will be forgiven you. This will not send right signals in making distinctions between political parties. And let me quickly peruse through some studies that have been done on voter apathy in the country. There was a study in INEC in 2011 following the crisis that followed the 2011 elections, where quite a large number of youth corps members were killed in the north and in other parts of the country. The commission under JEGA, which I was part of, commissioned a study under the leadership of Professor Adigun Agbaje of the University of Ibadan to conduct a study. What that study showed largely is that insecurity is a major factor in preventing people to exercise their franchise. Then I also did a private study where I look at the voters turnout across the zones. I was looking at the statistics, electoral statistics country, and the heaviest spot for that hemorrhage is the Southwest. Northwest is far better, Northwest is doing very well. Northeast also did very well in spite of the crisis in the Northeast, and also North Central. The Southwest trailed behind in the sense that it recorded the largest number of people refusing to cast their vote or even participating in the electoral process. Then I talked about the technology and election conundrum. That was a paper published in 2017. Now there's the Sloggers Lab, an inaugural lecture which was presented at the University of Lagos in 2017. Then there's also a paper by Waziri Ibrahim Mohammed, Elections and Voter Apathy in Nigeria. Overall, when you look at the critical variables promoting or triggering voter apathy, you cannot rule out insecurity. You cannot rule out the structure of the political party. The party is not creating a level playing ground for all the players. And quite a large number of the ordinary people, they don't take part in internal votes within their political party. The only thing to expect them to do is to come on the day of the general election to participate. Quite a large number of them are just staying away from the party system. They are not making any contribution. They are not even being asked. They are not being allowed to even make donations or to pay their dues to political parties. It's as if their money does not count. Also, their role participation in the primary elections actually have been allowed are not. So they see themselves as completely not belonging to the political parties and the political process. They refuse to participate. Then I said that ballot paper is, I refer to this earlier, is more or less largely a social contract document. But the elites, the political elites, tend to forget that it's a contract, not written, but it's a loaded contract. And they seem to renege most of the time on the terms of the contract that they have entered into with the voters. And then there's the creeping in of voter apathy in a large number of cases, which now are culminating in staying away from the polling units. Now, let me go to the practical steps that I consider that should be in order to combat voter apathy. Number one, I'm suggesting that national security should be depoliticized. Let's see it as a national emergency. It's not about APC. It's not about any of the other opposition parties. It should be regarded as a national emergency. Our country, to be sincere, our country is not safe for any kidnapping. Nobody who, I'm not sure there's anybody that can be left out in terms of knowing somebody who has been kidnapped at one, or abducted at one time or the other. Or people have not made contributions to rescuing somebody under the kidnappers den. People continue to make each sums of contribution in large sums to people for their relatives or friends to get rescued from the kidnappers. Then, how do we restore vibrancy to political parties? Is very important. Then, holistic rather than peripheral response to poverty issues. Where poverty is extensive and expansive, it's very, very difficult to convince the people that the next thing on their agenda is that they should go out to vote. Except you lure them with money. Even when you lure them with money, there's some of them who are really ethical. I've come across instances in different parts of the country where people even reject any offer of money for them to participate. There was an election I went for in Oyo North some years back, and people queued up, and then there was this disturbance. Some hoodlums just came to the queue, they disrupted them, they went back and they came back. When they came back, they started narrating their experience, that they are not interested in voting, but because they might be asking them for evidence that they participated, they might be asking them to display their voter's card. That was the only, because they said, according to them, 3-4 previous elections that they've had, their circumstances had not changed. I said, what is that circumstance? They told me that look at that river nearby, that is where they take water to drink. And that's where cows and other sheep around in the village, that is where they also drink water. So they are not being treated better than animals. Why should anybody expect them year in, year out, if not because of the subtle compulsions to come and participate? So in essence, therefore, the material component, socio-economic improvement in the life of the people, there must be something motivating people to go out there to vote. And that is on the part of those political actors who are in governance. Then restore vibrancy to political parties, make them to be relevant. Let the people, ordinary people, repossess political parties and see parties as their own. The grassroots people, a lot of assets are embedded in the grassroots, and they are ready to sacrifice without money. I've done it before. They are ready to sacrifice their time, They are ready to even sacrifice their money to mobilize people for what they consider as being good for them. But if all they see at the end of the day is that there's more poverty in the land, there's no water, there's no food on their table, they will ask the question, why should we get involved again? If we are going to get involved, why not peripheral involvement? Why should we be at the center of driving the process? Because according to them, they are driving the process for the people, the elites, to empower their children, to empower themselves. There is nothing in all this for them. Look at rural roads. It's in complete disrepair. I can say that from my own experience because I live within the people, within the community. The access to water, access to it, talk about basic things. There's virtually no asset. The more elections you've had, the more the obstacles that are erected on the way of provision of social services. It's not a blame game. You and I are part of the challenge. What can you do? What am I doing with my community? What are you doing with your community to change the scenario, to make things better for the people? There more research work needs to be done as well on the demography of voter apathy. We now know that the Southwest harbors the largest percentage of disinterested voters that believe they have no agency power, that they have no power, they cannot alter anything. If you feel you can't alter anything, you've written yourself, so why should you get involved in something that does not change your life circumstances? So people will say, I don't waste my time, let me just stay away and sleep off the people that would not go and vote because of family crisis, small excuses, I have headache, my mother is sick, or pause. There are not many. Majority of the people there because of the majority of the people stay away because of the fear of their life. They've had stories, they've had relatives who had gone to play a role in the electoral process and they ended up with death. They got death in return. So that is there. They also know that people have bastardized the electoral system, money for vote. One voter in Ekiti State asked a question, said, what with 10,000 to have my vote? What will you do in my life? That the old woman, he said, I've seen better time. I've seen good times in this country. Why should I be offered money in exchange for good education for my children, in exchange for access to medical health, in exchange for a good road? Because they know the logic very well, that you get money, then you are forgone. The future of social service availability, forget about it for the next 4 years. Then the change will come again after periodic participation. They are asking the question, why should I be a periodic player in the electoral enterprise? Why should I leave the whole of the entire 4 years for other people to play? Why should I be mute? Why should I be muted? Why should I not be happy? They're asking that question. They will not be ask us directly, but I've done research work. When I ask people what will make you to go out to vote, they will tell you, I see a governor who is able to do this, or a legislator who I can see not once in a time, not just when elections are coming, that can discuss, can come to me. Why should they come to me only before elections? As soon as the elections are won and are over, that is the end. I won't set my eyes on them again. And they are transferring this knowledge, this basic knowledge. Their children are being socialized into that, which further alienates them from the ruling elite, from the political party process. What is going to activate their continued involvement? So I'm also suggesting that let's increase the deployment of election technology into the system, because with the margin under Professor Yakubu, the margin of voting, accreditation and voting has reduced the time expenditure on voting. I was going to suggest before, why can't we, for everybody that comes to vote, if it is possible for INEC to vote money for people that come to vote, it's better for INEC to own that process rather than to leave it to political parties. Because they make nonsense of the secret balloting system. I've been to election scenes where after thumb printing, the electorate will have, the voter will be asked to display who the party you have voted for. That's the condition that will make you to qualify to get 5,000 X naira, X this. Otherwise, you don't. They will not write your name down for that. So the secret of the ballot is gone. What I'm suggesting, if it is possible, because the truth is that every voter out there who are ordinary people, when you take their time, when they spend their time on the queue, it's money lost. So why can't we compensate that? Quantify the amount of time that they waited for look, you transported yourself. Police units in some cases are far away. And there might be a reluctance. Why should I expend my money to empower somebody that I will not see again for the whole of 4 years? I better stay away from the election. So if you can empower them, pay for their transport, but you have to make it uniform. Pay for the time lost and compensate them, but it must be, I don't know how you can work out the methodology, but that is one thing we can do. Then again, how do we sanitize our register? The register, as I know from experience, we try under the guard to sanitize, to remove dead names. My father died 2013, I'm sure my father's name is still in the register. My mother died last year, August, I'm sure it's still there. My auntie died some years back, I'm sure her name is still in the register. So if somebody is fraudulent, can obtain that, and with the compromises of the electoral polling officer, the voter card can be used to vote. So, and again, you have overwhelming, you get the impression that you have that large number of voters where you don't have them at all. And you base your calculation on that base, which itself is faulty. So we need to do a number of things before the next general election. Otherwise, we might not be having that large number of apathy as we thought, but because we are not getting the statistics right, because the data is not there. And I think there should be ways in local community where local government offices of INEC can remove dead names, because death is something that is remarkable. People record it, the public is likely, there will be posters. All you need to do is to sign a methodology for it, because you can get names of people that are not there removed if care is not taken. A candidate in an election somebody can go and print his obituary information and then send it to the INEC office, get his name removed, get him to discover that the man is still alive. So we can sanitize, but I think we can improve on the register. And I also suggested that the law development, this webinar, the findings of this webinar can be taken to the grassroots, can be shared horizontally and vertically with the stakeholders by identifying them. So the center might have to spend some money to share the findings. Look, this is the data. This is what we are coming out with. How can we abate this? This is a nuisance. We want to make sure that you play more agency role in the electoral process. Of course, that will be a concern of INEC. So you can see how you can partner with other stakeholders to extend the frontiers of citizenship. And then we can have a robust participation in our election. Then let me quickly run through what I regard as Nigeria's electoral asset. Nigeria, in spite of all the challenges we face, we have a very formidable electoral asset in Africa. I'm not sure there is any, not even South Africa can compete with Nigeria in terms of electoral asset. And other countries have benefited from this. We've partnered with them, we've shared experiences with them, and I think it's for the good of Africa. So voters' role, to have a voters' role of the population of Nigeria is not an easy challenge at all. And I would like to commend the federal government for spending so much, especially under Jega's leadership, to compile a near clean voters register that we can continue to improve upon. Then we also have an existing election technology that continues to reduce time, that continues to make sure you can see the controversy that surrounded the real-time transmission of result and whatever. And it's good that INEC, I think, is trying to see what it can do to comply with this as much as practicable, without compromise, creating anxiety in the land. Then resilient voters, even part of what the development, this non-NGO is doing of DAUDU, SAN is doing, is part of that agency role of supporting resilient voters in our country. Then we have trained election officials, personnel that have very rich experiences in organizing, and they're bringing back some of these experiences to NBA conference. You recall that at a point in time, during the military, one must stand up and agenda. The same thing applies to national Bekor and Sankuti and others. The role of this professional organization cannot be ignored in writing the history of democratization in Nigeria, with particularly reference to Chief Ganifani, Femi Falana, and a few others. They were very active in making sure that they extend the frontiers of citizenship. The role of the media also cannot be ignored. We know how many media have been shot because of their active role, and also the vigilant role of NGOs, just as the one that is providing this platform. And mere active judiciary, because people know some fear that there should be a limit to the extent to which the judiciary should be turned into a voting arena, deciding who should vote. I think the best election should, judiciary should stay away completely. But again, there will be controversies in our elections that they cannot turn them at the polling unit. So the court increasingly will have to play a role. But if you can minimize the role of the court, so it will not turn our court into a cesspool where decisions affecting millions of voters will not be decided by 3, 5, 7 judges. That may not go well, because you cannot replace. They turn them into politicians. And there's no judge that will not have a political mindset. It's human. It's human to have a political mindset. What you do as judges, as election umpires, is to checkmate, to check, caution yourself. My politics, let me drop as soon as I enter the courtroom, as soon as I enter the election arena, let me drop my garbage, political garbage. That's what I did when I was in INEC. I have my political references. I have parties that I have soft spot for, but I would never allow that to interfere with what is going on the field. I try as much as possible. And I normally would tell, let's agree. If somebody is unprinted in between the logo of two political parties, what should we do? We agree before we begin the counting the votes. So once we agree, there's nothing to worry about. Because in a very close election, if that is not agreed upon, it might create mayhem, and the election can trigger crisis, and that will be the end of the. Then we've done well with our electoral asset, because we've had cases where incumbent governors, incumbent presidents have been defeated. This is a sign of a kind of robustness in the electoral process. Mr. Chairman, I think I can pause here. I have a few other slides that I've not talked to, but I think I feel good at this point. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. I've talked about practical steps that we have to take to restore life to the agency role of an average electorate. Once again, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Professor Lai Olurode, that was a very informative and solution-oriented discussion. Please, let's give him one more round of applause. Let's be rest assured that we'll take contributions and questions, of course, after all the speakers have spoken. I'm sure we all have questions. We've learned a lot. There's a huge gap in the citizen-state connection, which represents the reason for voter apathy in our country. Before we proceed, I'd like to recognize the presence of the Honorable Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, who is Professor Joash Ojuamukwito SAN, who is represented by Mr. Al-Hassan Akeji Umar, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He's watching online, and he will be our next speaker. Before we receive his discussion, before he takes the stage, we'd like to read a brief profile of Mr. Al-Hassan Akeji Umar, SAN. Could we please project his picture? He's online with us. Mr. Al-Hassan Akeji Umar, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, was born on the 27th day of April 1978 into the distinguished lineage of Alhaji Umar Akeji Akomoda of Ogbe Akpa royal family in Ankpa local government area, and Hajia Aisha Jumai of Umar of Olamaboro local government area of Kogi State. His background reflects a harmonious synthesis of traditional nobility and a proud commitment to educational excellence. He is a scholar of vast intellectual breadth. Learned Silk Umar is a product of Western jurisprudence and Islamic educational traditions. He underwent his foundational legal training at the University of Jos, where he graduated in 2005 with a Bachelor of Laws LLB degree, earning second-class honors upper division. In pursuit of his vocational excellence, he proceeded to the Nigerian Law School, Abuja Buhari branch, Buhari campus, where he replicated his academic distinction by finishing with a second-class honors upper division. On 7th of November 2006, he was called to the Nigerian bar and enrolled as a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. Furthering his intellectual quest, he obtained a Master of Laws degree from the University of Jos and culminated his academic pursuits with a Doctor of Philosophy in Law from the University of Abuja, marking him as a jurist of high academic standing. With a career spanning 2 decades, Dr. Umar has distinguished himself as a formidable litigator and a cornerstone of Nigeria's electoral legal framework. He currently serves in dual capacity as the Assistant Director in the Litigation and Prosecution Department of the Independent National Electoral Commission and the Executive Assistant Legal to the Honorable Chairman of the Commission. In his years of active legal practice, he has appeared extensively before various superior courts of record, election petition tribunals across the Federation, representing the electoral umpire with unwavering forensic precision. In recognition of his sterling contributions to the legal profession, his impeccable character, and his mastery of advocacy, the Legal Practitioners Disciplinary Committee, LPDC, found him worthy of the highest honor in the Nigerian legal profession, and accordingly, he was preferred and conferred with the prestigious rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria, SAN, in 2019. Please, let's give him a round of applause. Dr. Alassane Akeji Umar, SAN. Please, let's have your presentation. You have 30 minutes. I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
The chairman of the Rule of Law Development Foundation, however, the brother JB DAUDU SN, distinguished colleagues, respected panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by conveying the warm regards of the Honorable Chairman of INEC, Professor Joash Mokitan, who would have very much wished to be personally present to actually present, to make his presentation at this very important program organized by the Rule of Law Foundation. However, it is due to an equally pressing and significant engagement, which is actually going on now, right about now, relating to the electoral process, that he has directed me that I present him at this distinguished forum. And it is an honor and a great responsibility for me to address this timely conversation convened by the Rule of Law Foundation. In fact, our erudite Professor Olurode has actually done a very great job on these topics. But it's just for me to briefly talk to the salient issues. We are gathered here this morning to discuss a subject that is not loud, but is deeply consequential. Because we are talking about voter apathy. Ladies and gentlemen, democracy does not collapse overnight. it erodes quietly when citizens begin to withdraw. And when participation declines, legitimacy begins to tremble. That is where we are today. That is the most unfortunate reality. Across recent electoral cycles in Nigeria, the paradox has emerged. That is, on one hand, we have expanded voter registration. On the other, we have shrinking voter turnout. We have more people who have registered to vote, but fewer people actually voted. That is more in statistics. Even deeper is happening beneath the surface of our democracy. And as we approach the 2027 general elections, alongside other critical out-cycle elections, we have the Kitty governorship and Osun State governorship elections coming up. We must ask ourselves one simple but uncomfortable question. Are Nigerians losing faith in the power of their vote? I think that is the key of our discourse here. But before dealing with that, let us be clear about what we are dealing with, conceptual clarity. That is voter apathy. Voter apathy is not mere laziness. It is not indifference in its simplest form. It is often the outcome of accumulated frustration, repeated disappointment, and perceived irrelevance. And then there is electoral legitimacy. Legitimacy is not only about compliance with the law, it is also about public belief. It is because you may conduct a technically perfect election, but if the people do not believe in it, its legitimacy becomes fragile. Democracy, after all, is sustained not just by procedure, but by trust. And then what is the reality on ground? Let us confront the facts. Since 1999, Nigeria has witnessed declining voter turnout. In fact, I'm happy that Professor Roldf has actually given his statistics with a comparative analysis with other in other jurisdictions. You know, how the turnout has declined steadily over time from 1999 to date. Then there's a problem of low youth participation. Professor Roldf also illustrated this. So because of time, there's no need for me to really emphasize it, because I believe that he has actually dealt so well with it. And there's growing disengagement. You know, the elites mostly do not actually go out to exercise their civic responsibility. And that's the most unfortunate thing. So as we go forward, we will now realize, we'll be able to find out, okay, what is responsible for this? Even in recent elections, that is 2023, precisely the presidential one, we saw what we should describe as participation gap. That is a huge gap between those who can vote and those who actually choose to vote. So let me put it plainly. Registration as a voter actually captures intention, but turnout reflects the level of confidence that one has in the process. And where confidence is weak, participation declines. So having laid this conceptual foundation, what then are the causes of voter apathy? So what exactly is driving the trend? To be honest, the causes are so many. But most importantly, one that stands out is this issue of trust deficit. So many citizens question the transparency of the electoral process. So whether this perception is actually correct or not. But the damage is done. And the damage is the same, whichever way. Once there is that perception that the process cannot be trusted, there is already a damage. So the correctness or otherwise, for me, does not matter. So in democracy, perception is power. Another cause of voter apathy is political disillusionment. There is a growing belief that leadership does not reflect the will of the people. You see, promises are made, particularly during electoral campaigns. And then expectations are raised, but outcomes often disappoint. And that is why I agree entirely with the submission of Professor Olurugin. When you say that, you feel that, oh, if I'm not going to have any dividend for actually coming out to exercise my franchise, what is the point? Why should I waste my time? So and when hope is repeatedly deferred, participation begins to fade. Professor already also talked about insecurity and electoral violence, which I actually agree with as one of the causes of apathy. So where people see that going out to vote is dangerous, to their life and to their safety, they feel that abstention becomes the rational thing to do in order to safeguard and protect themselves. So no citizen should have to choose between civil responsibility and personal safety. So we feel that it is better to stay away. Another cause is economic realities. So for many Nigerians, the daily struggle for survival takes precedence. So that when the stomach is empty, when you are trying to really make ends meet to fulfill your responsibilities, for instance, as a family man, you feel that the ballot feels distant. So that should take precedence. So in that sense, it is not actually apathy, it is prioritization, between economic reality and actually going out to exercise your function. And then there is the psychology of futility. This is perhaps the most dangerous factor. There's a belief that my vote does not count. When the people believe this, democracy begins to lose its foundation. And that is why the coming on board of the present INEC chairman is more of, without trying to praise him, but this is the point that he has consistently made from the point of his screening and up to date, that his mission is to ensure that the votes of Nigerians actually count. And there are practical steps that are being actually taken in that regard. Dr. Alure talked about maybe issue of credibility of the voter register, that they need to clean up the register in order to, to have a credible register, which is the foundation of our election. That is correct. And the commission, under the present chairman, is actually doing something in that regard. In fact, the commission has scheduled the validation of voters to April, so that those who are actually active, because in fact that will be the basis for us to correctly even assess the issue of apathy. You have to know exactly who are actually the active voters. There are some persons, like you say, that have been dead and whose names are still on the register. So the commission wants to undertake this exercise, that it is those who have actually come up to revalidate their data that will be certified for election. Yes, we are going to have the record, the reason that is there, but we're going to have a sort of voters list, those who actually will come out for the exercise that will be taking place from April before the election. So that is very critical. So and there is also the issue of logistics. There are delays, long queues, and issue of technical glitches, and these are factors that can really discourage voters, from coming out to vote. So there are no minor inconveniences. So some people, by merely seeing a queue, a very long queue, is enough to actually discourage them from coming out to exercise their franchise. So, and also of which civil education of the citizens. So where understanding is shallow, engagement will always be fragile. So there are some people that actually do not, many people, voters that do not actually know the essence of actually voting in democracy. And that is why people actually even trade their votes. This issue of vote buying is a sort of, yes, ignorance is part of it. So what then are the implications of all of this as we move towards the 2027 elections? The implications of voter apathy is that we will have weak mandates. When leaders emerge is after an election with limited backing. The government is elected by a minority, contrary to the concept of democracy, which is a representation. It's very few people that will actually bring government into power. Another implication is there will be distorted representation. That is, the key voices, as we have observed, especially the youth, will be underrepresented. And when voices are missing, decisions become skewed. And we witness this. And then another implication is higher risk of manipulation. So low turnout environments are easier to influence. So democracy becomes vulnerable, not because of action, but because of absence. Those who are actually supposed to come out to ensure that credible leaders, are elected, they're absent. So, and another implication is governance instability. You know, policies most time will lack acceptance, trust declines, and then tensions will rise. Democratic backsliding. So apathy can open doors to anti-democratic tendencies. And this we must never allow to. And that is why this engagement is very important. We are trying to look for the way forward. It's very important. This is something that should be glossed over. So, and as INEC, we remain committed to enhancing transparency. You know, INEC has enthroned a number of innovations, you know, from the beavers and the iron. All of these efforts are geared towards, you know, building public trust in the process. You know, as we have observed, trust deficit is a major factor. And one of the ways with which we can actually build the trust is to leverage on technology. And the Commission is actually seriously committed to this, to having transparency, then expanding voter education. You know, we have a department, the VET, and they are devising new and modern means of actually ensuring that, you know, people are conscientized with respect to, you know, the need to actually exercise their civil responsibility of coming out for election. And then improving electoral logistics. So the Commission is actually taking steps in this direction. However, the Commission alone cannot manufacture trusts. Trust is built collectively. And that is why the Commission is always calling on relevant stakeholders to partner with it and join hands in ensuring that we will build trust in the electoral process so that we are able to contain this menace of voter apathy. So the civil society must act as a bridge between the system and the citizen. And that is why we actually commend the Rule of Law Development Foundation for this initiative. The Commission is pleased with this effort. So the role of the civil society is critical in driving civil education, advocating transparency, engaging the youth, and facilitating dialogue. This is because democracy is strongest when citizens are informed and involved. So then, what is the way forward? Actually, given a robust and seamless ways that actually we can contain this, and I adopt it, you know, as the way forward. But for the purpose of emphasis, these are the things that we must do. That means review trust through transparency. I've outlined what the Commission is doing to ensure that transparency, and then we should institutionalize continuous civil education. You know, I also say that we have a department, you know, that is actually taking both steps in ensuring that, you know, we achieve this. And then there should be a guarantee of election security. You know, this is a responsibility of the government. to guarantee electoral security, so that people should not fear that when they come out to exercise their franchise, they are not safe. So this is very important. And then to simplify the electoral processes, this is by the commission, and certainly doing that. Then engage the youth meaningfully. Demand accountability from political actors. These are ways to actually contain this apathy. Ladies and gentlemen, voter apathy is mouth noise. In our view, it is a warning, a quiet warning that citizens are stepping back. But democracy only works when the people show up. If citizens withdraw, legitimacy weakens. If legitimacy weakens, governance suffers. If governance suffers, the state is strained. So the task before us is clear. Like I have said, to restore trust, reignite participation, reaffirm legitimacy. This is because in the end, the strength of our democracy will always be measured by the willingness of our people to take part in it. So I thank the organizers of this engagement, for the opportunity. I rest my case here at this point. Thank you very much. Most grateful. How much obliged. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leonard Silk. Please let's give him one more round of applause. The Leonard Silk has enlightened us on the prevalence of voter apathy and its implications for Nigeria, his own mission. Thank you very much, Leonard Silk. Before we move to our next speaker, I would like to recognize the presence of some distinguished guests, some of who are watching online, and who also joined us for our presence. We want to recognize the presence of DAUDU George Anuga, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. We thank you for joining us. We want to, please let's give a round of applause. Recognize the presence of Mr. Adedayo Adedeji, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Mr. P.V. Daudu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, joined us. Please let's give him a round of applause. Mr. Anoze Obi, MNI. Madam Ozioma Izora, she's also watching online. We have with us Mr. Anselm Obaraize. We have CEO Bozo Esquire. We also have Mr. Dixon Owatu. Our next speaker, who we've tagged as the mystery speaker to come and cap the event all up, is Mr. Festus Okoye. He's a senior legal practitioner for several decades. He's the former chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association Kaduna branch. He has also served as the former National Publicity Secretary of the Nigerian Bar Association, the national branch. He was also a former commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission in charge of information and voter education. So you see why he's well pleased to speak to the topic today, National Commission. Please let's give him a round of applause as he comes to give us his presentation.
The chairman of this occasion, the former president of the Nigerian Bar Association, other speakers, ladies and gentlemen. I'm speaking here today because of conspiracy. Where that conspiracy was hatched, I was not there. All I know is that when I arrived, I was asked to take the stand and speak. Now, I think that this particular topic is germane and is very, very important as we move towards the 2027 general election. My first point of departure is to ask the question, do we have voter apathy in Nigeria or voter suppression and disengagement? Because voter apathy, to me, seems to suggest a people that do not care, or a people that do not have interest, or a people that completely lack interest in the electoral process. And my question is it that Nigerians do not have interest in the electoral process? And my answer is no. My answer is completely no. Because when I was the chair of the Transition Monitoring Group, I have observed the elections where women went to the polling units as early as 5 a.m. in the morning to take a position at the polling unit. I have observed the elections where a woman went into labor, went and had her baby and came back to come and vote. That does not suggest a people who do not have interest in the electoral process. So I think that people like Professor Olorode, those who can intellectualize these issues, should advise us on whether what we have in Nigeria is voter apathy or voter suppression and disengagement. Because for me, voter suppression and disengagement imply a sense of powerlessness, imply a sense of discouragement from voting. So when you discourage people from voting, you do not call that voter apathy. I observed the election in 3 places. I monitored the election as a national commission in 3 places, and I give you just practical examples because I can't regard myself as an intellectual. In one of the places, one of the political parties overnight moved in political talks into a local government they believe they did not have control of. Overnight. So the people in that local government woke up in the morning. Nobody was harassing them, but you wake up in front of your house, you see a strange fellow carrying a dagger and a cutlass, and he's not talking to you, and he's not talking to you. So in that particular local government, the whole of the local government, they recorded just around 500 votes. Because when you come out from your house and you see a strange figure with a cutlass, you just go back home. You just go back into your house. I supervised elections in Anambra as a national commissioner. And in one of my supervisory roles, I went to a particular local government. As we were moving on the road, some people overnight had used paint to write "vote and die, vote and die, vote and die." So I got to a polling unit that had around like 10 polling units in a particular school. By 1 p.m., no single voter had voted. People were peeping through their windows to see whether anybody has died. So that is not voter apathy. So I don't agree that can be regarded as voter apathy. Now, but if we accept that there's voter apathy, what data do we use or rely on in coming to that conclusion? Is it the current voters register that we should use in coming to the conclusion that there's voter apathy? Because at the end of the day, if you have 93 million voters on the voters register and only 10 million vote, you use that 10 million as an indices in measuring whether there has been voter apathy or whether there has been progress in terms of voting. What is the quality of the current voters register? But at the time the voters register was compiled, possession of the permanent voters card was the in thing. The moment you have the permanent voters card, you can use it to vote. People use the permanent voters card to vote multiple times. Sometimes they finish voting in this polling unit and move the voters card to a different polling unit. So, based on that, we still have voters cards in the hands of people who still believe that something can happen and they can still use them. So, in 2022-23, when you saw all those trending videos of voters cards being dropped in the forest, voters' cards being dropped on the streets. It is people who have realized that what they have has become useless. But the names of those people whose names are in those PVCs are still in the voters' register. They have not been removed. So what is the quality of the voters' register? Now, as an electoral management body, INEC introduced the automated biometric identification system to assist in removing multiple and double registrants. But the truth of the matter is that Nigerians do not even trust government institutions. During the CVR in Anambra, I went to supervise. I saw a woman. Her voter's card was defaced. I said, Madam, you don't need to register afresh. You only need to go and tell the registration officer that your voter's card is defaced and that you need a new one. She said you have been sent to come and deceive us, that she must register afresh. I went to another place. I saw a young boy who was behaving in a very suspicious manner, and I isolated him. And I found out that he had registered more than 10 times. And I asked him why. He said that one voter's card, one registration is 5,000 in his local government. And that the moment he goes back, there are some politicians who have programmed them. The moment you present one, you have 5,000 naira. So what is the quality of the voters register we are talking about? Nigerians, as Nigerians, we do not have the culture of voluntarily going to go and say, oh, my father died last year. Please, can you remove his name from the voters register? We don't have that. We don't have that culture. We don't have it. So the names of people who have died are still in the voters register. And in the commission, what we used to do is we look at newspapers and remove the names of prominent people who have died, those who can afford a full page in the newspaper. So we are sure that those people have passed on, and then we remove their names. Because the removal of somebody's name from the voters register is not an easy thing. You can't just walk in, remove somebody's name from the voters register. Now, one of the things that has kept people away from the polling units and from voting is that people believe that government is not working for them, and that sometimes that the outcome of elections are predetermined. So if they believe that the outcome of election is predetermined, why should they go and waste their time? There are also some people who have PVC. They don't want to vote. If they go to the bank and they say, bring your ID card, and they show their PVC, it's okay. So they just get a PVC and use it as an ID. So we must also understand that the electoral environment is still very toxic. The electoral environment is still very, very toxic. I monitored election as a national commissioner in Cross River. A by-election. The moment the presiding officer started counting, I started receiving distress calls from presiding officers and supervisors that their lives were in danger, that the police have asked them to go away, that they can no longer guarantee their security. I thought it was a joke. But when the calls became persistent, I felt that the lives of corps members were in danger. What did I do? I got mobile police and put them in a bus and asked them to go and bring all the presiding officers back to the local government. That vehicle came back riddled with bullets. And some of the corps members were in hospital for over 2 weeks. The parents of one called me and said, you know, this lady you sent out to go and do election, she's my son and she's my daughter. Whatever happens to her, I will find you wherever you are. So the electoral environment is still very, very toxic. And sometimes you can't convince people on why they should even come out on election day. Now, the debate in the National Assembly over the provision of Section 60 of the Electoral Act 2026 did so much damage to the electoral process. The debates around it convinced some Nigerians that the present crop of the political elite do not believe in democracy and that they want a predetermined 2027 election. So it did a lot of damage. There's also a growing perception, because we are talking about 2027, there's also a growing perception that the 2027 elections will be concluded at the conclusion of APC primaries. And at the moment those primaries are concluded, you will have a good idea of what 2027 will portend. That's a perception. Now, what are the dangers ahead based on what we are discussing? The first danger is that most young Nigerians have become disengaged from the electoral process and are glamorizing unconstitutional governments in other parts of Africa. The political elite do not see this danger. They are glamorizing unconstitutional governments in other parts of Africa. So for them, it now becomes irrelevant if democracy fails or if democracy collapses. But the truth of the matter is that most of them do not have experience of living under a military dictatorship. Mr. President here has. I have. Obi Anozie has. Sometimes, you know, during that particular period, sometimes they don't feel comfortable coming to my house because associating with somebody like Festus Okoye is a one-way ticket to detention. So somebody who has not experienced military regime can glamorize the military regime in other countries. Now, another danger is that a significant portion, a significant proportion of the political elite, the ruling elite as of today, do not believe in democracy. They don't believe in democracy because if democracy collapses and we now have a military government, they will return as ministers, they will return as commissioners, they will return as heads of parastatals and heads of institutions. Because they have no ideological base. They don't have any ideological leaning. So whether it's democracy, whether it's military rule, they can function and prosper. So they can do anything they like with democracy. The other danger is that they have also weaponized poverty. Make the people poor. On election day, follow them to their houses with money. Collect their voters' cards. Get them out to the polling unit and just get their votes. Every other thing is by the way. And then there's also a number of Nigerians who cannot see the impact of democracy in their lives. Now, there's the issue of constitutional, political, and moral legitimacy. You know, the constitutional threshold for national and state assembly elections is first past the post, +1. +1. So if in a senatorial district with 1 million registered voters, only 10 persons come out to vote, 10. And there are 10 political parties on the ballot. And the political parties get 1. But one political party did not get anything, and one of the candidates got 2 votes. The truth of the matter is that the person is your representative. It's immaterial whether there are 1 million registered voters. Then, for presidential and gubernatorial elections, the threshold is different. If you look at Section 134 of the Constitution, it gives you the threshold. It says that for you, if there are more than 2 presidential candidates, For you to be elected, what you need is a quarter of the votes in each state, in 2/3 of all the states of the Federation. So, I'm not too sure, I didn't do well in mathematics in my school SAT. So I've been calculating it, and I don't seem to be getting it. So a quarter of the votes in a state, you have 1 million registered voters in a particular state, and only 4 people voted on that day out of the 1 million. What is a quarter of the voters that voted? 1. So, the Constitution says that you should have a quarter of the votes in 2/3 of all the states of the Federation. So, if 1 voted in each state, and you need a quarter in 2/3 of all the states of the Federation, how many votes do you need to win? 25 or 26? So you can see that you don't need 93 million Nigerians to vote and for you to become a president. That you need less than 40 votes to become a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That is constitutional. It may not be moral. You may not regard it as politically legitimate, but it is constitutionally legitimate. So these are the challenges we face. So how do we return constitutional, political, and moral legitimacy to our elections? And that will be done. For me, Nigeria needs a new biometric voter register. New. There's no two way to it. We need a new biometric voters register so that when we count, we should be sure of the number of people who have voted and the number of PVCs in people's hands. Secondly, it is also my candid view that any person who does not vote in 2 electoral cycles, that the Constitution or the Electoral Act should be amended to make it mandatory for people to vote in at least in 2 electoral cycles. If after 2 electoral cycles you do not vote, we suspend their name from the voters' register. 3. 3, I believe that that civil society groups and organizations must campaign for the dissolution of the existing political parties and the revision of Section 221 to 229 of the Constitution for us to establish ideologically driven parties rooted in the people. The current political parties merely serve as electoral platforms and lack ideological depth. They lack ideological depth. There is no difference. Take the leaders of all the big political parties. Look at each of them. You will see that all of them have traversed 3 or 4 political parties. So they are seeking for platform. It's platform. I also believe that Nigerians must realize that change can only come from those who actively participate. Complaining and criticizing on social media cannot instigate change and the change we seek. It cannot. So, on election day, if you refuse to go and vote, 4 people will vote in a state and somebody will become president. Final before final. Nigeria and Nigerians will not live under or accept a one-party dictatorship in Nigeria, as one-party dictatorship is akin to living under a military dictatorship. Civil society groups must launch a campaign for democracy, as the so-called opposition parties offer no hope for a better Nigeria. They don't offer any hope for a better Nigeria. And finally, while we must gradually infuse technology in our electoral process, we must not over-glamorize technology as if it is flawless. We must find a nice blend or a nice balance between the manual and the technological, or between the manual and the scientific, and have that blend. Even in some advanced countries, they don't even trust technology. So if we put all our hopes on technology and technology fails us, where do we go from here? Mr. President, under no circumstance must we give up on democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Festus Okoye. He's brought a very different dimension to the conversation. He's explained the distinction between voter apathy and voter disengagement or suppression. Thank you very much. He was the first panelist and first guest to arrive today. Please let's give him one more round of applause. Without further ado, I'd like to invite the coordinator of Rule of Law Development Foundation for his contribution. Please let's give him a round of applause.
Thankfully, a lot of what I'm about to say, a lot of ground has been covered by the distinguished speakers who spoke before me. However, it is traditional in the webinars for the commission or for the foundation to give its own perspective of the topic. And I can give you an exposition beforehand that it appears that I have giraffed the papers presented by all the distinguished panelists. So if you hear certain things, do not take it that I breached copyright. I will also try to be brief, knowing fully well that substantial ground has been covered and we might be saying the same thing in different ways. So bear with me. What I plan to do is to take you through the introductory part and then just talk to a few aspects of the presentation, and I'll be done. Now, I started by saying democracy as a system of government requires the participation of people. The objective of democratic governance is to provide the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Those who did jurisprudence or philosophy know that this is the utilitarian principle set down by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mills. Now, this utilitarian measure is an apt marker capturing the essence of a democratic government. Thus, in a nutshell, for democracy as a system of government to succeed in a country or territory, there must be people participation in the way and manner. Those who run the lives of the people through governance are selected or chosen. This is usually achieved by way of periodic elections, where people who aspire to hold elective offices through which the people are governed are chosen. In Nigeria, the basic law is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended. This document not only sets out the basic features of governance structure of the country, it also sets out inter alia, that is among other things, how the principal officers who administer the country through designated political offices are chosen for both the center and the 36 states and federal capital territory. You can add the local government councils. Consequently, where these elected officials, beginning from the office of the president, vice president, state governors, federal and state legislatures, local governments and councillors are meant to be elected by the voting population. And these people have been identified by the prevailing Electoral Act as persons who are over 18 years old and who possess a voter's card, and are expected to show up on the election day at their respective polling stations to vote for their candidates. And where they do not do so, voter apathy creeps in, and the objective of governance by the Constitution is to attain in a country peace, order, and good governance for the teeming population. And Nigeria is said to be, we don't even know the exact figure, between 240 million and above. Because a general election is a periodic event as shown above, its organization in every country that professes to practice democracy is very complex. In Nigeria, the organization of this event and other like events is vested in the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, whose body is a creation of the 1999 Constitution and presently headed by Professor Joash Amupitan SAN, the chairman of this occasion. This body is in charge of registration of voters, organization of elections, the declaration of results, and the presentation of certificates to successful candidates who have been declared as having won the election. INEC therefore operates a very complex bureaucracy which requires substantial support in material and intellectual forms to enable it discharge its constitutional duties. Now, on voter apathy, I referred to the statistics which we provided in our concept note. There is no need to go over it again. And adopt with respect the statistics provided by Professor Lai Olurude, which shows quite clearly the dwindling performance of the voting population vis-a-vis the registered voters. Now, from the above disclosure, it does not require rocket science to discern that there is a direct correlation between optimal voter participation and good governance / legitimacy of existing government. This discourse does not merely seek to interrogate the nexus between voter participation and conduct of elections, but specifically to inquire into what is driving the disinterestedness of voters to participate in election cycles, particularly when they know or ought to know that the officials or persons they elect or purport to elect are those who will steer the reins of governance and expend massive resources in the nature of billions and trillions of dollars / naira for the administration of the nation. Now, this expenditure, as you all know, is divided into capital and recurrent expenditure in the various appropriation acts and laws of the federal and state governments. The politicians, that is the class from which these officials are elected, are the people who administer these colossal resources. I'm sure you know where I'm heading to. From the spate of corruption trials and even the history of governance in Nigeria, it is clear and incontestable that the general public have come to the conclusion that for most politicians, the allure to public office is merely to take their share of the national cake. That is these millions and billions that we have talked about. Thus, the Nigerian voting population have become increasingly discouraged and despondent Aside from the noticeable impoverishment and decline in their lifestyle as a result of the non-performance of the said political class in the discharge of their constitutional functions, especially when we talk in terms of money, the voting population is completely fed up, demoralized, dehumanized, and wasted by the non-delivery of what politicians call the dividends of democracy. So, what is there to bring joy or even hope to the people who constitute the voting population? Is it because there is abundance of electric power? Is it because there is abundant provision of health facilities? Is it because states and federal government provide free qualitative education? Or they build roads and infrastructure, provide potable water, and other dividends of democracy? Now, most important, are we secure? Can we exercise our constitutional rights without let or hindrance? Can the voting population say that their economic fortunes is better since the civilians returned in 1990? So what is the way forward? Really, the question is, what is the way forward? In the concept note, we posed 4 issues or 4 questions. I'll deal with them summarily. The reasons, first is the reasons for the current voter apathy in Nigeria. Some of the reasons for this alarming voter apathy have been provided above, but the question is more serious than we imagine. For a society to thrive, the government structure, and this includes elected officials or leaders, as they are called, must be like Caesar's wife, Calpurnia, who is above board. Can we say that our leaders are above board? Can they say that their intention is not towards wealth and other type of acquisition? It means, therefore, that they must not be corrupt, must not exploit the people, must not tell the people lies, must not enrich themselves at the expense of the people that they claim to represent. Can we say that our elected officials have fulfilled the promises they made to the people on the wings of which they rode to power or flew into power? Like Festus Okoye said, nowadays, they do not make any promises again. They do not need you to vote. Once a consensus agrees on the fact that you are the one to go, one form is sold, and that is the end of the matter. You become a senator or a representative. Now, where is the electricity upon which the people will anchor their productivity and economic fortunes on? Where is the security for which the people will have the peace of mind to pursue their daily activities? All the above indices are absent in the lives of at least 90% of Nigerians. Now, can it be expected, reasonably or otherwise, that the people who are so afflicted and or traumatized will fall in line for them to queue up on election day and vote for the people that they consider as their traducers and possible enemies? The answer should ordinarily be in the negative. But paradoxically, a dwindling number of people still come out to cast their votes at elections. Why is this? A number of theories have been advanced for this aberration. Firstly, is that there is monumental voter inducement through the handing out of cash incentives, food palliatives, and other material gifts, so as to ensure that this small group of voters present themselves on election days to give the appearance that the system is working and that an election took place. Now, Mr. Festus Okoye has given us the flip side to it, which is that those who even intend to come out, who have not been sanitized by inducement, are discouraged from coming out with a variety of methods which I can confirm are correct and which he mentioned. Secondly, as the voters become more enlightened as to the real reason or cause of their non-progress in life, which they rightly attribute to the political class, they naturally keep away from the polling station or area. Indeed, they ask themselves, is it worth it? Why should they keep repeating the same cycle of unproductive venture without getting any result? The effect is the desertion of polling areas and by extension the election. So in effect, the politician is like the termite or parasite, which in feeding recklessly off and on its host, that is the Nigerian populace, is like the termite or parasite, which in feeding recklessly off and on its host causes its demise and at the same time brings about its own end. And it has been explained to us that at a point in time, if we continue on this trajectory, the present democracy will collapse. These are warning signs, but as usual, our people do not heed the warning. Why they do not heed the warning is that whichever government comes again will deal with the same political class. So heads, they win, tail, they win. In the long run, therefore, where is the benefit? Where is the benefit? And this brings to truism the scriptural adjuration to the effect that what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? Consequently, translated to the Nigerian situation, what does it profit the Nigerian politician if he acquires all the riches and wealth from the sweat of the people and in the long run loses the entity called Nigeria? And we're getting to that point. We'll deal with it in due course. It may seem far-fetched that the entity called Nigeria is threatened with extinction, but is it not? How and where do we factor in this imminent threat? The answer is obvious, and it is staring at us in the face. The control of large swathes of Nigerian territory by non-state actors in the name of terrorists, bandits, kidnappers, unknown gunmen, cattle rustlers, is a pointer to the fact that the Nigerian political class have lost it and are not on top of their game. The effect is now low productivity and unhappiness among the Nigerian people. How then can such a people be expected to troop out on election day and vote for those who have created this toxic environment, to borrow the words of Festus Okoye, and by which they are being persecuted and oppressed? These and other factors constitute the reason for low voter turnout in Nigeria. The implication, another subhead, the implication of voter apathy on the upcoming general election. The answer is predictable and not far-fetched. In the run-up to the 2027 elections, there has been an alarming but disturbing trend in the organization of the pursuit for political offices by political parties, particularly the main political party, the APC. In the past 2 years, there has been a disturbing but indeed noticeable trend for highbrow political office holders to migrate, cross-carpet, transfer their allegiance from the political party on whose platform they rode to power to the ruling political party, the All Progressive Congress. Although the APC has come out to say that they cannot stop people from admiring them and crossing over to their party, and that they welcome them. But when we look at this issue critically, the trend now has seen that the APC has acquired more governors, more senators, more representatives than they had almost on a landslide case when they came in the year 2023. And this is due to decamping and other negative democratic tendencies. So this has led the voting population to conclude that the 2027 election will be a no contest. Indeed, it is being said even by the politicians themselves, who are running helter-skelter to look for platform, to look for accommodation, that they are only working towards 2031. Is it 2030? 2031. Let's hope, too, that this same ruling party will not be tasting a dose of its own medicine when that time comes, if they do not open up their party for internal democracy. This gang-up of all what has been created is that there is now a total gang-up of all the political gladiators in this country into one political party at the advent of a general election. And this is the first time it has happened in Nigeria. We have never witnessed these times. Now, this represents this political class laying down the gauntlet of a battle between that political class and the people. So it is a matter of us versus them. Although some people may argue that since we take election cases and do cases for people who are tried for corruption, that we are part of the them. But I plead the Fifth Amendment. Now, this battle between the people who don't come out to vote, which is when they should come out to vote, to make up their minds and go a different direction, though epic, will be one-sided. It is called for the political class because the occasion the latter has, because on this occasion, the latter has perfected the system which they have been experimenting with and which has brought them or will bring them ultimate victory over the people they govern. The 2027 election appears in human terms to be over. But the lessons to be learned will be devastating for governance and the subsequent elections. Let us say no more on that. Recommended improvements and/or solution to low voter turnout in future elections, particularly the 2027 general election. I really, this error in the heading, I have completely given up on the 2027 election unless some miracle happens. So it's really for the future elections. This is the thrust of this discourse. How do we Nigerians and its authorities and agencies, such as INEC, put an end to or reduce the growing threat of voter apathy and, in some sense, voter suppression? Firstly, the ball is in the court of the political class. it is time for them to abandon the old ways of winner take all, to abandon selfishness, to abandon the total absence of principled politics, to introduce ideological politics into the scheme of things, to avoid money politics, failed promises, ostentatious lifetime, and a mockery of the electorate and outright lies. Now, I listened when Mr. Koyi said that the entire political parties should be collapsed and others encouraged to come up with ideological basis or platform. You cannot give what you don't have. In 1992, and you remember, General Ibrahim Babangida created 2 political parties, wrote their constitutions for them, lifted them up. I don't know whether he lifted up in 2 hands or one after the other. He christened one a conservative party, the National Republic Convention, and the socialist one, the Social Democratic Party, and begged them to develop an ideology. That is to choose between capitalism and to sell the virtues of socialism to the public. Let the public, and thinking that that will be something that will evolve in Nigeria. Between 1992 and 1999, the entire idea was forgotten. The politicians returned back to their old ways of politics. In fact, they developed stomach infrastructure. They developed politics for my personal benefit and my family. And the politics became revolved around the acquisition of wealth and the bringing up of, in fact, Nigerian politics detested any kind of opposition. It is classed as just blowing grammar. So therefore, contemplating political parties with ideological base would be a very tall order. I do not say it's impossible, but it can only be evolutionary. Perhaps when we go through the crucible of suffering due to our collective corruption, because I do not believe that only the politicians are corrupt. Even the common man, I have seen more corruption practiced by those who you consider, those who are not privileged, but that thing is there in our gene. And that is what drives us to do dastardly things like kidnapping our fellow human beings and selling them and collecting money for them, and most times killing them. So, I said, in other words, politics should not be about primitive acquisition of wealth, which most politicians now indulge in, but it should be about people-oriented projects. Is the Lagos-Calabar Trans-Ocean Highway, or however it is called, a people-oriented project? Couldn't that money have been spent to refurbish virtually all the roads in Nigeria so that in the next 4 years, people will continue to move around the country seamlessly? However, that is left for people to decide. Secondly, the leaders must take conscious steps to fight the main scourge of the country, which is corruption. I believe all these things we are talking about has only one name. It is because the corruption factor, anything that is going on in this country, you just ask yourself the question, where is the corruption in this business? and you immediately see where it is going wrong. If any government is genuinely bold enough to fight this monumental vice, and that will be an ideological philosophy for it to anchor its... but you can see that even the opposition who want to take power only want to take power for taking power's sake. Nobody has come out to say, look, even though I was a very bad man when I was governor, or I was this, I was that, I took people's money, but now I will return what is left and devote the rest of my life to fighting corruption. Not one of any of the opposition parties have said they will fight corruption. So we are in for that. Even they are even recruiting new converts into the business of corrupt practices. Let me tell us, we will not make any progress. They are taking loans for our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren to come and pay. Very soon, those who give us the loans will come, probably ship us to one Australian desert and take over this land and use it in the way that is befitting to them. Since our ancestors would at that time have sold the entire country. Thirdly, there is need to place education of the Nigerian citizenry on the front burner. The problem is lack of education. Young men and women don't go to school again. They are doing Yahoo Plus, Yahoo Plus Plus, Bet Niger, everything that seems to promise that you will make it, as soon as you finish university, you will become a billionaire, you will drive a Jeep, you will marry 4 beautiful wives and 10 girlfriends, all of very light complexion, and that is a pipe dream. It doesn't happen that way. It doesn't happen that way. I have put in 45, going to 46 years in legal practice, and I cannot consider myself a rich man. So, but I'm comfortable. So I encourage every youth out there to look for a profession to do and live his life by the day, as the scriptures say. And don't expect that you will make it, you will hammer within the first 6 months of practice. It doesn't happen that way. So we need education. Look at the state of schools. We need education, whether secular, religious, or civic, or all put together. Now, even if we introduce this new template of actually educating our citizens, ensuring that they have good schools, ensuring that they know their rights, it will take us 25 years to get to the point we were in 1999. But better late than never. And so, I conclude. The only solution is for all Nigerians to fight corruption. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the coordinator of the Rule of Law Development Foundation, Mr. J.B. Daudu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you very much for that presentation. We've come now to the question and answer session, and would also like to take contributions from our distinguished guests and other persons online. Can we please have a display of the persons who are online right now? Who are willing to speak? Yes. I'm sure there will be hands raised. Whilst we're doing that, maybe we can have contributions from the on-site venue. Do we have any contributions, questions? You have one, sir. Okay, sir. 1 minute.
Well, every election cycle, I travel to Maya to vote in my village. By today's calculation, it will cost me ₦1 million to go for each election. In Abia State, everybody's Labour Party now. Those who were even elected under APC have all migrated to Labour. Hopefully, the Labour Party will survive to be able to sponsor them. But so the challenge is that young men who have come of age to vote. Last week, one of them came to me and told me he needed to go to school to clear from university. He graduated 3 years ago. He didn't go to do clearance. What was doing in the last election was to provide POS for transferring money to voters. So I said, you didn't save enough money for transferring money to voters because they said there was no cash. So the boy was running POS. If you vote, you go to him, he would transfer 3,000 to you. I told him I was not giving you money to go and clear. What I will give you, I called my sons who are his age mates. I said, please send him money. Send 60,000 naira to go and clear. For him to know that you need to go to school and you have to engage in productive enterprise to be able to pay your bills. No gifts at the election will pay your bills. So I think that the situation is, even voters' apathy is getting worse. Those who participated in it, who were the promoters in that election, they didn't get payment. So Mr. Okoye, you have to tell us how to get people back on the road to believing in the electoral process. In the 2015 election, I campaigned for Alex Oti in my constituency. He did not win. 2019, he did not win. So when it was 2000 and this last one, they came to me and said, okay, we voted for you last time. You didn't give us anything. I said, we did not win now. If we did not win the election 2 times, what are we supposed to give to you? So they say, you have to pay us this time. You have to pay us up front. I participate in this business. But unfortunately, the voting population are getting more disinterested because they now want upfront payment before they vote. So I think that this is a very serious national problem. And we have to find a way to at least encourage our household to vote. Unfortunately for me, I have to pay ₦1 million 2 times in this next year's election to be able to go to Umaya to vote for presidency. After 2 weeks, I go again to vote for governorship and House of Assembly. But I will do so because I believe we must continue to express it was our effort that produced, and the help of people like Festus Okoye that produced our Salvation Governor, Alex Oti. But in some places, they're giving up. They're not interested in fighting to regain their states. But I do hope that now that you're on our side, Okoye, you join the crusade in getting the people to vote. Thank you.
Have a contribution. Madam Ozioma Oziwara. Please, can Mr. Festus Okoye tell us when the portal will allow us to transfer voters' card to the FCT? It was closed for the FCT elections. Thank you. Please, can we note that? We also have another one, Oluwatosin Adekoya. How can failing to vote in 2 election cycles result in having one's constitutional right to vote suspended? What's the justification for that? I believe this question is directed at Mr. Festus Okoye as well. We have Ikechukwu Negbe. I thank the great resource persons. When Dr. Okoye suggests that, okay, same question. Thank you very much. When Dr. Okoye suggests that persons who didn't vote in 2 electoral cycles may be suspended, how would INEC guarantee the safety of voters? Very important distinction. Mr. Israel Usman, to all the speakers, do you consider that recent electoral jurisprudence in Nigeria also contributed to voter apathy? Thank you very much for those contributions. Do we have more?
Good afternoon, and mine is kind of a contribution. The first is the first speakers talked about giving allowances to voters, just something to encourage people when they come out to vote, something for drinks and transportation. I think this will then be the legalization, the beginning of the legalization of vote buying, because then you wouldn't know who is buying votes and who is giving money from INEC. Secondly, it will also increase corruption because the budget for that for funding that allowance given to people. I think voter participation is a civic duty that people should not be rewarded for doing. You are actually voting to secure your own future and that of your children. Then the second one is a question that I want to direct to Dr. Okoye. Talked about voter suppression, which is a causation for voter apathy. Why does INEC insist on conducting elections when they have seen that elections are threatened, violence is threatened, or violence is imminent? I think that if we start insisting that if there is violence, we set our election dates for times when you can extend these voting periods. People who cause this violence, you use money to sustain violence. And I believe that if we continue to move these elections to a point where these politicians run out of money to sustain these people who are helping them to orchestrate violence, we'll end up having elections where their thugs will no longer be able to carry out their actions. So if they fix elections today, you wake up in the morning and see that these thugs are there. Why will INEC not cancel elections or shift elections in those areas so that the money you've paid those thugs for that day has gone? You will continue paying them money. By that time, they will smoke. Next day, you have to pay them something. By the time you run out of resources, the election will have to hold one way or the other. Then on the issue of removing names from voter register, someone like myself, I transferred my card from the East to Abuja here for the last elections. I was told my card was ready. To date, I don't have it. I have gone to INEC offices. They moved me. They told me from Life Camp to Gariki. I have moved back and forth, back and forth. I still don't have my card to date. So I did not participate in the last election. There are chances I will not participate in the next election. That will be 2 election cycles. Then my name is out of the voter register. So I think we will just be playing straight into the hands of these politicians. If you do that, they will just remove everybody from the voters register. And please, sir, how do I get my card without filing for judicial review? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution. We also have someone here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank the speakers for speaking very well on this subject. My question is sort of like an exposition on one of the questions that was displayed on the screen, which is the fact that as the recent electoral jurisprudence, has it contributed to political apathy? And I would give an example. In 2023, after the general elections, I was fortunate as a youth corporate to participate in one of the gubernatorial election petitions, and we did it all the way to the Supreme Court. And one of the interesting positions that I think still calls for controversy to date is the fact that, based on how the provisions of the paragraph of the first schedule to the Electoral Act was crafted with respect to witnesses, the Supreme Court was reluctant to draw a distinction on subpoenaed witnesses and regular witnesses. And I think that reluctancy in its own doing, and thereby allowing for, because the end product of that finding of that position by the Supreme Court was that all the testimonies of subpoenaed witnesses or witnesses to be called was that they must be front-loaded alongside the petition within 21 days. Now the problem with that position is that it's hardly achievable, because assuming you intended to call an INEC witness is, maybe as a petitioner, you intend to call an INEC witness, is an adverse party, and so he can't guarantee you may not be able to get his written witness statement or not. So what I am trying to say is that I think that the recent position, this is just one of many, but the recent electoral jurisprudence that was introduced or canvassed at the last elections, I think is also contributing to political apathy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have online? Yes, please. We have some contributions online. Okay. Tari Worikpre. Can we please have your contribution? Mr. Tari, can you hear us? If you can hear us, please unmute yourself so we can have your contribution. Any other? Is there any other person? Could you please check the chat box? All right. Then let us have responses from the panelists. We'll start in the order that the presentation was made. Professor Lai Olurode, there have been many questions. Could you please give us your thoughts, your final thoughts on all the questions and contributions raised? We can't hear you, sir. Could you please unmute yourself? Pending when Professor Lai, okay, yes.
Yes. An issue was raised about the position that I suggested about not making an average voter to become poorer by participating in the electoral process. There should be a means through which the system can reward an elector. And I say this with all sense of responsibility. If it is budgeted for, and we know the number of people who are exercising their franchise, I think there might be a means, not necessarily getting the funds across to them right at the polling unit, but there should be a way, the way people leave their marketplaces, when they are not allowed to move around and they go out to vote, they lose income. And there's nobody to actually replenish their resources. And I think that's a way of encouraging them. We might factor in that possibility. It does not, I'm not sure it's going to add to the country of the money culture during election, but I think it's an expression of sympathy for an average voter that are taking all the risk in spite of risk to his life, to his livelihood. He goes out there to go and exercise his franchise. It should not, because of that, participation becomes poorer. How it is done, the mechanism can be worked out. And on removing the names of people that have died or have been physically displaced from the register, who have migrated, who have left the country, how do you identify the names of those in the register that are active? I think INEC, if in principle this meeting recommends that to INEC, INEC is going to sit down, talk with the remaining stakeholders and see what can be done in order to make sure that this issue is addressed. I think it's one matter that cannot be glossed over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Leonard Sil, can we please have your thoughts very quickly? Leonard Sil,
Hello?
we can hear you, sir. We can hear you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Loud and clear.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Let me start by commending the robust recommendations made by David DAUDU. In fact, that doesn't capture the whole essence of this engagement. Going to some of the questions that have been raised, I think there's a question relating to when at the time that INEC will resume transfer of voters in the FCT. Yes, the exercise was suspended in the FCT having regard to the FCT elections conducted recently. And the commission is
Okay, let's have Mr. Festus Ope's contribution, pending when the website resumes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me confess that I have learned a lot from the contributions made by Professor Layo Olorode, from the contribution of Mr. President and all the other speakers and all the questions that have been raised. Let me just say this. In relation to some of the questions posed, the conduct of election and the guarantee of electoral fidelity is a multi-stakeholder venture. No single agency has the capacity in this country to conduct elections. You know, so many people do not, when we talk about the diversity of Nigeria, people take it for granted. There is a place in Cross River. Vehicles do not go there. Motorbikes do not go there. Bicycles do not go there. The electoral management body pays individuals to carry people at the back to assess the polling units. There are communities in this country where the electoral management body has to pay the Navy to protect electoral materials and electoral personnel on the high seas. So if the Navy refuses to protect personnel and materials on the high seas, the electoral management body cannot deploy. So the security agencies are critical to the conduct of free, fair, and transparent elections. And that's why I'm saying election is a multi-stakeholder venture. The political parties we have in Nigeria do not believe in democracy. They will rather the people do not even come out to vote. So, if, as I pointed out, you have a toxic environment on election day, talks are all over the place, how can people go out to go and vote? No, they cannot. So, the conduct of election is a multi-stakeholder venture, and we must see it as such. Secondly, what is it that we can do to get people to believe in this process? All of us must be stakeholders. Mr. President pointed out that even the ordinary people you are talking about, some of them, their hands are not clean. I observed election in one of the states of the Federation. A woman approached me and said, my son, these people are offering 10,000. I've gone to them. I showed them my card. They refused to do business with me. Even the people who are offering 5,000, I even went to them and they refused to do business with me. I said, make I can't go home. So the people where they offer 3,000, I go to them. They refuse to do business with me. Please, can you help me and go and beg them? And I looked at her card. I found out that she had the old PVC that was not machine readable. So she was of no electoral value. So, if we must make progress, all of us must agree that democracy must survive. The second issue, for the electoral management body, one of the lessons I have learned on reflection is that when elections are approaching, it is very important to pay attention to public opinion. But ultimately, look at the Constitution and look at the law and implement what the Constitution says and what the law says. Because sometimes what is trending and what is in issue may not be constitutional, may not be legal, but people will run with it. At the end of the day, people will judge you with what is out there and not what is in the Constitution and not what is in the law. So that is also very, very important. On the issue of not conducting elections in places where there is violence, there's a constituency in Ekiti. The commission made sure that they did not have a representative for almost 3 years. 4 elections were conducted and all of them ended in violence. But that is for a small election. You cannot do that in a big election. For instance, in a presidential election, if you look at section 132, subsection 2 of the Constitution, It says you cannot conduct a presidential election earlier than 150 days and not later than 30 days to the end of the tenure of the incumbent. If there is violence and the electoral management body is unable to conduct election and you fall off this 30-day period, there is no provision in the Constitution that tells you what to do. So we return to the doctrine of necessity, or we return to a constitutional crisis. So it's a very, very complex web. And finally, I was asked, why do you want to suspend somebody's registration after 2 electoral cycles? And my answer is this. 1 electoral cycle is 4 years. You refuse to vote in presidential election. You refuse to vote in gubernatorial election. You refuse to vote in National Assembly election. You refuse to vote in senatorial elections. Local government elections came, you refuse to vote. 4 years elapses. Then another 4 years comes. You refuse to vote in presidential election. You refuse to vote in gubernatorial election. That is a total of 8 years. The next year is what? 12 years. I'm not saying that we should remove your name from the register. I'm saying your name should be suspended to know whether you even exist or you don't exist and whether you're a ghost. So because if you're a ghost, you will not show up. But if you're a human being, there's a possibility that after 12 years, you will show up. You don't have your name on the register as for show business. No, it is for purposes of voting. And that was why you went and registered. If you don't intend to vote, why did you go to register in the first place? It's not for show business. So that is my own take. We must find ways and means of sanitizing the electoral roll so that at the end of the day, when we say 10% of the people voted, we will know that it's 10%. And not 10% of a figure that we do not know. So I think that we must begin to find ways and means of re-engaging our people with the electoral process. And one of the ways we can do that is by insisting that governments at all levels must begin to be honest with the people, must begin to implement policies and programs that address the sufferings of the people. If you have not gone to an IDP camp, you don't know what this country is all about. One of the top people in this particular government was do I say on exile? And I met him. I met him in Washington, D.C. He was a top person in this government, in Nigeria, before he went on exile. And he called me, he said, Festus, I cannot handle exile. He said it 3 times. But when I listen to him now, it seems he also wants to send some people on exile. So, let us get our governments to become accountable. The people in Borno State, somebody who is in an IDP camp, is not thinking of voting. The person is thinking of going home. The person is looking at the daughters growing up in IDP camps and having babies in IDP camps. So let governments at all levels do something about the security of the people so that our people can go home, so that our people can vote. Watch it. When the election comes, all those communities where there are no human beings will return votes. So where are those votes coming from? I said it, that in this country, electoral reforms and innovations last for 2 electoral cycles, and the politicians will find an antidote to it. They found an antidote to the smart card reader. They found an antidote to the beavers. So as the commission keeps on upgrading, they keep on working very, very hard to find an antidote on how to break the new innovations. So let the political elite, the Nigerian people have harassed INEC. INEC has improved. But the political parties have not improved because the leaders of some of the parties are the ones who own newspapers. So nobody is checking them. So let us harass the political parties, let them have internal democracy in their parties, and let them reform the political parties so that the political parties will be political parties in the true sense of the word that ministers to the ordinary people of this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Festus Okoye. I'm being told that the Leonard Silk. Yes, please, you can have your thoughts now, straight away. But we can't hear you.
Yes, I was. Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Yes, as I was saying, with respect to the question on when the FCT transfer of voters exercise and other things relating to the voter register for the FCT and transfer will resume. The Commission is working on that. You know, as you may be aware, the Commission stopped the exercise in difference to the Electoral Act that required that 90 days to election you stop anything relating to the voter register. And that is why for the FCT it was stopped, and then the Commission will resume that very soon. It's quite interesting with respect to the recommendation by very senior counsel, Festus Okoye, that any voter that has not, any registered voter that has not voted for two election exercise cycles, his name should be removed from the register. I think that we are meant to differ in the sense that if you look at the provision of section 14(2)(a), sovereignty belongs to the people. So that voting, in a way, is a right. The fact that somebody has not really, at the point in time, exercised his right, does not mean that he should be punished for it. So for us, it raises a constitutional concern. And that is why, like I said earlier, what the Commission has done, or what the Commission intends to do, is to actually do a revalidation exercise by calling on all those who have registered to revalidate, to show that they are really active, so that it is only those ones now that will actually be certified for election. And that is reasonable. We'll have your name on the register, but for the purpose of election, if you do not take advantage of the revalidation exercise to show that, oh, you are alive and you are active and you are ready to vote, you will not be able to vote for that particular point in time. Rather than actually outrightly delisting the name of the voter from the register. So I think that is on that. And invariably, all the other recommendations that have been made are well taken. And any aspect that actually concerns the Commission, the Commission will definitely work on it in order to ensure that we call these means of voter apathy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Leonard Silk. Abdullah Yaya, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, could you please give us your thoughts now? You're still online.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all of the speakers. I listened to the coordinator of the Rule of Law Development Foundation, and I completely agree that voter apathy is a huge problem. But like somebody suggested, I think the electoral jurisprudence, and particularly now the Electoral Act, is going to contribute greatly to voter apathy. The other thing is the fact that most of the gladiators in the political space, the fact that they have all now gravitated towards one party creates the impression that, well, whether you vote for us or you don't vote for us, we're going to be back in power. So the electorate begins to feel that, look, whether I vote or I don't, these people are just going to come back. So why should I suffer myself, go out? There's a tendency to have violence. Why should I go and put myself out there at risk it won't matter. The other observation I want to make is it is a bit worrisome now that the Electoral Act as it is has now reduced the grounds for challenging an election to just 2. It's just corrupt practices and non-compliance and majority of lawful votes cast. So my question to all of the panelists is, what happens to qualification, which is a constitutional issue? And I say this because the Electoral Act now makes it punishable that any person who challenges an election on grounds other than these 2, for counsel, you can be fined 5 million naira. And for the petitioner, he's going to be fined 10 million naira. Is that not going to now create, even among the political gladiators, a voter apathy? Because it means that there's no point in me, even if I know that a man is not qualified to stand the election, once the party nominates him and he wins the election, I can't go to court because it is not part of the Electoral Act, even though it is part of the Constitution, because you can only challenge an election on just those 2 grounds. And those who are supposed to challenge it as a pre-election matter, nobody appears to be going to court because they are all in one party. I don't know how the panelists will all react to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll have the final contribution from the coordinator of the Law of Development Foundation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I will just merge my own responses with the closing remarks. Firstly, let me deal with Abdullah Yaya's question. It's very complicated. It just shows the extent to which the political manipulation of the system can affect what traditionally used to be one of the best ways to get rid of unqualified candidates. Now, at the beginning, when it was removed, I thought it was designated or reduced to a pre-election matter. That is for aspirants to deal with the issue of qualification before the elections. It made sense at that time, until we saw the effect of every politician gravitating to one party and the idea of issuing one form per aspirant. Now it then follows that if you did not buy a form, or you were not allowed to buy a form, you cannot challenge the qualification of that candidate because you are not an aspirant at the election. Now, because you are not an aspirant at the election, and the new Electoral Act forbids qualification as a ground for election, you are left with 2 options. One, and this is free legal advice. One is for you, that is the person challenging, to go to court now and challenge that provision of the Electoral Act, and to say that it is unconstitutional because it debars you from challenging at an election petition, which is the only place you can challenge the candidature and have the whole section struck down. But the politicians will be happy. It will mean then that there will be no, but they risk breakdown of law and order. Secondly is to engage the interpretative jurisdiction of the Federal High Court under Section 251 Q and R and S. to give declarations in respect of that candidate, even if you are not an aspirant. I don't know whether when you compare 285 and 251, whether it will allow you to do so. But in law, where there is a will, there must always be a way. So it is for lawyers to earn their pay by researching on the subject matter, not just throw their hands up helplessly and say that the politicians have outdone us. I don't think politicians can outdo the legal community. So the ball is now in our court. Secondly, on the issue of the expurgation from the voters register of names of persons who are suspected to be no longer alive or who are no longer willing to participate in the election, I think we missed the solution. And the solution lies in the National Assembly. There must be enacted a new Registration of Births, Marriages, and Deaths Act, which will be applicable throughout the country and which will make it an offense not to register any birth, any marriage, or any death within a period of 21 days. And it will have recurring fines. And there should be education as to it. This is the only country where we do not have an electronic, so that when somebody automatically clocks 18 and it is discovered that he is still alive, you issue him immediately with a voter's card. You call him to come if he's interested in the driving license to come for test. That is what is done in advanced countries. So we need to register births and at least deaths. And once INEC looks at the register of deaths and finds a correlation between those who appear in the register of births and deaths and their voters register, they simply, without further ado, remove the names. But you know, this idea, it may not come to light except in 50 years' time, when somebody will just think that the time is right. The same thing with people who die suspiciously or in manners. The Coroner's Act is, I think, a 1943 ordinance, or 1918, something around that region. But if you look at the coroner's laws in advanced countries, no corpse is buried except an autopsy is conducted. And that is because it is to save the generations, the people left behind. In the event there is something pandemic that killed the person, something genetic, something that the autopsy, which is like looking at a TV or an X-ray machine of what happened to the person, then you'll be able to save more lives. So the same thing with this register of births, deaths, and marriages. So the National Assembly needs to reduce undue emphasis on appropriation acts, on oversight of committees where there is the question of you have not performed this contract, you have done this. So we need to really do the things that will enhance good quality of living in Nigeria. As it relates to our electoral jurisprudence, I think that the courts are being unduly made scapegoats. The law is very clear. All those who were in... The problem is that people who did not step into an election tribunal come on social media to pontificate and abuse judges that they have taken money before giving a decision. I cannot defend them whether they took or they did not take. But when judgments are in unison, they are in tandem, they flow, it abides with judicial precedent, you would see that the sections of the law have been interpreted consistently. it is usually very difficult to accuse those judges. If you're an election petition law practitioner, to accuse them of having done. Indeed, everybody knows at the time you have brought your witnesses, you have closed the case, in your conscience, you know whether you will lose or you win. But because you want to please the politicians, you keep telling them that something is wrong, the judge should have done this or should have done that. Our electoral jurisprudence, though overloaded, is one of the best in this country, in this world. I've read the case of Al Gore against George Bush. If you read the judgments of all our justices of the Supreme Court on identical matters, you will find that there is great class and correctness in law in what we decide. But political interests and selfish views will not allow us to accept or agree. I'm not saying that in all cases that they are right. There are situations where, because they are human, they miss the mark. But on a preponderance, I think we should not throw them under the bus the way we have been throwing them under the bus. So on this note, I'd like to bring this webinar to an end and to thank all the panelists, the speakers, and the participants with great effusiveness for sparing their time and their intellectual abilities to deal with this very urgent national topic and the provision of solutions. I only hope that the chairman of INEC will engage the relevant authorities to enforce or to implement some of the suggestions that have been made here, as may be modified by INEC or the authorities themselves. But one thing is clear: change is needed. Adjustments are necessary. And this is the right time to make those adjustments so as to show that we are serious about enthroning democracy. Our next webinar comes up next month, God sparing our lives, and it will be on state police and the fact of the viability or otherwise. I used to be an advocate, a strong advocate of state police, but I'm in the process of re-examining my options. So we will have one webinar within the next 1 month on state police. So I thank you at this point and wish all of you a very happy Easter ahead, and journey mercies if you are on site to your destination, and a very blessed day if you are within the confines of your home or office. Okay, thank you very much. MC, will you call for the closing prayer?
Thank you very much, sir. Can we please have closing prayer? Any volunteer? Distinguished sir, please help us with the closing prayer, sir.
Our duties as citizens to participate in the choice of those who will lead them. Help our leaders to know that they are they are ruling a people who deserve to be governed properly, and guide each and every one of us to be apostles in the marketplace, to encourage our families and those who listen to us to be part of the process of the election and to vote and to see that our votes are counted. At the end of the day, the Bible says, once have you spoken to us, have we heard that power belongs to you. Let your power prevail and let the people regain their authority to choose those who lead them. Guide our country right, our leader who has organized this webinar. Let more of this come, and let those who it is addressed to, listen to them. Blessed be your holy name, for we pray in Jesus' name.
Thank you very much, sir, for your wonderful prayer.